The help wanted ad was written in faded ink on yellowed paper, pinned to a corkboard at the unemployment office. No phone number, no address, just coordinates scrawled at the bottom and a single line that made my skin crawl even then. Night shift only. Must follow the rules. I should have walked away, but rent was due in 3 days. My bank account showed $12.37, and desperation has a way of drowning out common sense. So I drove my rusted Honda down Route 201, deeper into the Maine wilderness than I'd ever been, following those coordinates into a place that maps seemed to forget existed. The tavern materialized from the fog like something conjured from a fever dream. A squat wooden building, its walls blackened with age and moisture, squatting at the intersection of 2 dirt roads that vanished into dense forest. No other buildings in sight, no power lines, no cell towers piercing the canopy of ancient pines that pressed in from all sides like curious giants. The parking lot was empty gravel, weeds pushing through cracks that spelled out words I couldn't quite read in the dim light of dusk. A neon sign flickered erratically above the door. The CROSSROADS. Half the letters had given up, leaving only TECOSSODs, buzzing and sputtering against the gathering darkness. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at that door. Something about it felt wrong. The wood was too dark, too smooth, like it had been polished by countless hands over countless years. The brass handle gleamed despite the building's obvious decay, as if it had been recently cleaned, or as if something inside was always reaching out. The first rule was taped to the inside of the door at eye level, written in the same faded ink as the job posting. Rule 1. Never look directly at the customers between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. My new boss was a woman who introduced herself only as Mrs. Blackwood. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back so tightly it stretched her features into something almost mask-like. Her eyes were the color of winter ice, and when she smiled, her teeth seemed too sharp. "You'll work alone," she said, leading me behind the bar. Her footsteps made no sound on the wooden floor. 5 nights a week, midnight to dawn. The pay is excellent, but the work requires dedication. She showed me to a clipboard hanging beside the register. 7 rules, handwritten in that same fading ink, the paper worn soft from handling. Rule 1. Never look directly at the customers between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Rule 2. If someone orders the usual, pour them a glass of water and walk away. Rule 3. The music box on the shelf behind the bar must never stop playing, winded every hour. Rule 4. If the temperature drops below 50 degrees inside, light the fireplace immediately. Rule 5. Never serve anyone whose reflection you cannot see in the mirror behind the bar. Rule 6. If a customer asks about the basement, tell them it's closed for renovations. Rule 7. Always leave by dawn. Never stay to see the sunrise through these windows. Questions? Mrs. Blackwood asked. I had 1,000. Instead, I heard my voice saying, "When do I start?" The first 3 nights were quiet. Almost normal if you ignored the way the floorboards creaked in patterns that sounded like footsteps when no one was walking. If you didn't notice how the shadows in the corners seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. If you could pretend the whispers were just wind through the walls. The customers were locals mostly. Truckers passing through. A few hunters heading out before dawn. They paid in cash, spoke in low voices, and left generous tips. None of them seemed surprised by the rules posted clearly behind the bar, and none of them asked questions about the basement door that had been painted over so many times the layers formed ridges like scar tissue. The music box played continuously, a tinkling melody I couldn't identify but couldn't get out of my head. Something classical, probably, but warped by the mechanism's age into something almost mournful. I wound it every hour as instructed, feeling the resistance in the key, hearing the springs coil tight with potential energy. On the 4th night, things changed. I was wiping down glasses when the temperature dropped. Not gradually, the way it does when a front moves through, but all at once, like stepping into a freezer. My breath began to fog, and frost started forming on the windows despite the mild October weather outside. Rule 4. I hurried to the fireplace, hands shaking as I struck the match. The kindling caught immediately, flames leaping higher than they should have, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move independently of the fire. The temperature climbed back to normal within minutes, but the flames continued to burn with an intensity that made my eyes water. That's when I noticed the customer. He sat in the corner booth, the one where the overhead light had burned out weeks ago, according to Mrs. Blackwood. I hadn't heard him come in, hadn't heard the door's distinctive creak or the brass handle's heavy click. He was just there, wearing a dark suit that seemed to absorb light, hands folded on the table in front of him. "Evening," I called out, proud of how steady my voice sounded. He didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that I'd spoken, just sat there, perfectly still, facing the bar but somehow looking through me rather than at me. I approached his table with forced casualness, order pad in hand. "What can I get you tonight?" When he looked up, my pen slipped from numb fingers. His face was wrong. Not obviously, not dramatically, but in ways that made my brain stutter trying to process what I was seeing. His features were too symmetrical, too perfect, like a photograph that had been subtly airbrushed. His skin had the waxy quality of something that had never seen sunlight. And his eyes were black. Not dark brown, not dilated pupils, but black like deep water, like the space between stars. When he smiled, his teeth were perfectly white and perfectly straight, and there were too many of them. "The usual," he said. His voice sounded like it was coming from very far away or very deep underground. "Rule 2. I poured a glass of water from the tap, my hands steady despite the ice forming in my veins. Set it on his table without making eye contact. Walked away without a word, just as the rule instructed. Behind me, I heard him drink. The sound was wrong, too loud, too wet, like something being poured down a drain. When I turned back, the glass was empty and he was gone. No sound of the door. No flash of headlights in the parking lot, just gone. The water glass remained on the table, but now it was full again, full of something that wasn't water, something dark and thick that seemed to move on its own, swirling in patterns that hurt to look at directly. I left it there. The 5th night brought 3 customers in quick succession, each stranger than the last. The first was a woman in a wedding dress, yellowed with age and stained with something rust-colored. She ordered coffee but didn't drink it, just stared into the cup, while tears fell from eyes that reflected no light. She left exact change on the table, 13 pennies, all dated 1962. The second was a man who cast no shadow, despite the bright fluorescent lights overhead. He ordered whiskey neat, drank it in one gulp, then ordered another, and another. The bottle should have been empty after 6 shots, but the level never dropped. He paid with a $20 bill that crumbled to ash the moment I touched it. The third customer made me understand why the first rule existed. He arrived at exactly 2:17 a.m. I know because I was watching the clock, counting down the minutes until I could look at customers again. The door opened with that familiar creak, brass handle clicking, but the sound seemed to echo longer than it should have. I kept my eyes down, focusing on wiping the same glass I'd been cleaning for 10 minutes. Heard footsteps cross the floor, heard the scrape of a chair being pulled out, heard him sit down at the bar directly in front of me. "Bourbon," he said. "Make it a double." I reached for the bottle, still not looking up, relying on muscle memory to guide my movements. Poured 2 fingers into a rocks glass, slid it across the bar in his general direction. "Look at me," he said. The compulsion hit like a physical force. My neck muscles twitched, wanting to obey, but I gritted my teeth and kept my eyes fixed on the glass in my hands. "Look at me," he repeated, and this time his voice carried harmonics that made the windows rattle. "I know you want to. I know you're curious. Just one quick glance. What could it hurt? Everything. Every instinct I had screamed that looking at him would hurt everything. I focused on the music box, on its endless tinkling melody, using it as an anchor to keep myself grounded. 37 more minutes until 4 a.m. I could do this. "You're stronger than the others," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The last girl lasted 3 nights before she looked. Poor thing. We had to scrape her off the ceiling. I concentrated on my breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. "Do you know what happens to people who break the rules?" he asked conversationally. "Would you like me to show you?" The temperature began to drop again, but this time I didn't dare move to light the fire. Rule 4 said to light it immediately, but Rule 1 said never look at customers between 2 and 4 a.m. What happened when rules conflicted? My breath started fogging. Frost spread across the bar's surface, crackling as it grew. The bourbon in the customer's glass began to steam, as if the alcohol was freezing while something else in it remained molten hot. "Please," I whispered. "Please what?" he asked. "Please let you look. Please make it stop. Please explain what you've gotten yourself into." The music box began to slow. Not stopping, not yet, but the melody stretching out like a record playing at the wrong speed. I risked a glance at the clock. 3:47 a.m. 13 more minutes. You want to know about the basement? He continued. I can smell your curiosity. Sweet and sharp, like copper pennies and vanilla. The others always wanted to know about the basement too. I didn't want to know about the basement. I wanted to finish my shift and drive home and never come back. But he was right about the curiosity. It gnawed at me like hunger. That painted-over door and Rule 6's insistence that it was closed for renovations. The basement is where we keep the ones who looked, he said. Would you like to join them? They're not dead, you understand. Death would be a mercy. They're just aware, perpetually aware of what they became when they saw us as we truly are. 3:52 a.m. The music box wound down to silence. In that sudden quiet, I heard them. Voices from below, muffled by wood and stone and layers of paint. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once in languages I didn't recognize. Some sounded human. Others didn't. My hand found the music box key without conscious thought. Started winding, desperate to drown out those voices before they drove me mad. The familiar melody began again, but now it sounded different. Sadder. More urgent. Smart girl, the customer said. You're learning. Rules exist for a reason. They're not suggestions or guidelines. They're the only thing standing between you and an eternity of screaming. 3:58 a.m. Almost time, he said. 2 more minutes and you can look at me all you want, assuming you survive what you see. The voices from below grew louder. I caught fragments now, words in English mixed with the foreign tongues. Help us, please. Make it stop. I should have never looked. 4 a.m. I looked up. The bar was empty. No customer. No glass. No sign that anyone had been there at all. Just me and the music box and the voices fading back into silence below. But on the bar where he'd been sitting, burned into the wood like a brand, were 4 numbers. 1962. The same year on all those pennies the woman in the wedding dress had left. I worked 6 more nights before I learned the truth. It came from Mrs. Blackwood herself, who appeared at closing time on my 11th night as suddenly as she always did, materializing from shadows that seemed deeper than they should be. You're doing well, she said, settling onto a bar stool with fluid grace. Better than most. The rules are becoming second nature. What happened in 1962? I asked. Her smile was sharp as winter. A girl worked here. Pretty thing. About your age. She followed the rules for 3 weeks, right up until she didn't. What did she do? She looked. Between 2 and 4 a.m. she looked directly at a customer who told her not to. Curiosity killed more than the cat that night. I thought of the voices from the basement. She's still here. They're all still here. Every employee who broke the rules. Every customer who got too curious. This place collects them. What is this place? Mrs. Blackwood's reflection vanished from the mirror behind the bar. I could see myself clearly. Could see the bottles and glasses, but where she sat was just empty space. A crossroads, she said. Between here and there. Between what is and what shouldn't be. Some places exist in the spaces between spaces, and some jobs require workers who can navigate those spaces without losing themselves. Are you dead? No, not exactly. I've just been here long enough to become part of the place. Like the music box. Like the rules. Like the basement door that keeps trying to open itself. I looked at the door she mentioned. The paint was fresh, but underneath I could see the outline of scratches, as if something had been clawing at it from the inside. Why do you need employees at all? Because someone has to serve them. The things that come here, they're not from our world, but they remember what it was like to be human. They crave the rituals, the normalcy. A drink served by human hands, a familiar place to rest during their journeys between dimensions. We provide that service. And in exchange? In exchange, they mostly leave the rest of the world alone. This tavern is a pressure valve, a place where they can satisfy their hungers without hunting in cities and towns. A few employees over the decades seems a fair trade for the safety of thousands. I thought about that for a long time. About the customers who came through, about the rules that kept them contained, about the basement full of those who'd failed to follow instructions. What happens if I quit? I asked. You can't, Mrs. Blackwood said simply. Not anymore. You've seen too much, learned too much, but you can choose to follow the rules and live, or break them and join the others below. Those are your only options now. The music box wound down to silence. I got up to wind it, muscles moving automatically, and realized she was right. I couldn't leave. Couldn't even imagine leaving. The tavern had become part of me, just as I'd become part of it. One more thing, Mrs. Blackwood said, as she prepared to fade back into the shadows. There's an 8th rule. We don't write it down because it's the most important one, and the most dangerous. What is it? Never trust anyone who tells you the rules are just suggestions. She smiled, and for just a moment her teeth looked too sharp. Welcome to the night shift. I've been working here for 3 months now. The rules have become as natural as breathing. I know exactly when to look away, when to pour water instead of liquor, when to wind the music box before its melody dies. The customers have names now, though I never asked for them. The man in the dark suit is Mr. November. The woman in the wedding dress is Sarah. She whispered it to me one night along with the year she died. The one who casts no shadow calls himself Echo. They're not so frightening once you understand them. They're just travelers, really, passing through on journeys I can't comprehend to destinations I can't imagine. They tip well, they follow their own rules, and they never stay past dawn. But lately, I've been hearing things. New voices from the basement, speaking in accents I recognize. A girl from Portland who answered the same help wanted ad 2 weeks after I did. A man from Bangor who saw the coordinates scrawled on a bathroom wall and thought it sounded like an adventure. The thing is, I never saw them break any rules. They seemed to understand, seemed to be following instructions just fine, but they ended up below anyway, adding their voices to the endless chorus of the lost. That's when I realized the truth Mrs. Blackwood didn't tell me. There is no 8th rule. There are only 7 rules, and they work perfectly. For a while. But this place doesn't just collect rule breakers. It collects everyone eventually. The rules are just a way to sort us out, to determine how long we last before we join the others in the basement. Some break quickly, unable to resist looking or asking questions or trying to leave. Others, like me, follow every instruction perfectly and last months or even years before the tavern decides it's time. And I think my time is coming soon. The customers have started looking at me differently. Mr. November smiles when I pour his water. Sarah leaves flowers instead of pennies. Echo has begun casting a shadow, and that shadow looks exactly like me. Mrs. Blackwood appears more often now, always watching, always waiting. The music box requires winding every 30 minutes instead of every hour. The basement door has fresh scratches around the frame, and sometimes I catch myself walking toward it without remembering the decision to move. But the strangest thing is this. I'm not afraid anymore. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe the fear is what keeps you human, and once it fades, you become something else. Something that belongs here between the spaces, serving drinks to travelers from dimensions that exist in the corners of nightmares. Tonight feels different. The coordinates have appeared in my handwriting on the help wanted board at the unemployment office in town. There's a new name in the appointment book Mrs. Blackwood keeps behind the register. Someone young, someone desperate, someone who won't ask too many questions about a job that pays well for simple work. I've written out the rules in fresh ink, my handwriting matching Mrs. Blackwood's perfectly now. 7 rules that will keep them safe for a while. 7 rules that will buy them weeks or months before they join the rest of us below. Because that's how it works here at the Crossroads. Everyone serves their time above ground, following the rules, serving the customers, winding the music box. And eventually, everyone joins the permanent staff downstairs. The music box is slowing down again. Time to wind it up. Time to welcome the new employee. Time to take my place in the basement, where the real work begins. After all, someone has to explain the rules to the newcomers. Someone has to help them understand that this is just the beginning. Someone has to whisper through the floorboards about what's really waiting for them in the spaces between spaces, in the crossroads where hungry things gather to feed on fear and curiosity, and the desperate need to understand what cannot be understood. The door is opening now. I can hear footsteps on gravel, can hear a car engine ticking as it cools in the parking lot. Soon there will be questions and answers and rules that must be followed. For a while. Welcome to the night shift. Don't break the rules. Not unless you want to join us down here in the dark, where the music box plays forever and the rules are written in blood on walls that sweat with the tears of the lost. But don't worry. You'll understand soon enough. We all do, eventually.